And then after that, we watched another movie that I'd heard of it. I didn't really know anything about it. We watched The Rescuers. The Rescuers is the 1970... What was it, 77? Yeah, it is 77. Animated film. I had never heard of Well, I'd heard of it. I didn't know really anything about it. I loved this movie. I really, really liked The Rescuers. And it specifically, I wasn't expecting it to, but it hit this very particular sense of nostalgia for me, despite the fact that I'd never seen it. When I was growing up, I had a lot of books, like children's books and some other stuff, but mainly books that were focused specifically on like small people and like mice and their little societies. So I had, the first thing that came to mind when I was watching this movie, I had to go pause it to look it up, was this book that I had as a kid called The Island of the Skog, which was, where is it? Island of the Skog, S-K-O-G, which was a book by Stephen Kellogg, also from the 70s. And that's a book about these little mice, and they live in, where do they live? They live in like a city, and then they're going to get like exterminated or something. So they go and build a ship, and they take it out to sea, and they end up on this island. And on the island, there's this, they think that there's this monster called the Skog, which is kind of this spooky looking, kind of ghostly looking thing. And it's just like a real, I haven't read it obviously in over 10, maybe 15 years, because it was when I was a little kid. But, you know, I looked it back up and I remembered, I remember basically what it was about. I had a lot of Stephen Kellogg books. I realized I really like Stephen Kellogg. He also did Pinkerton, the dog. He is a mysterious tadpole. He did Can I Keep Him? I had this whole collection of Stephen Kellogg books when I was a kid, and I really loved his style of storytelling and his artwork. I find very charming and very nostalgic, and The Rescuers reminded me a lot of that. I also had, as a kid, I also had the Borrowers books, which are about like tiny little people who borrow little household objects, which is another thing. Like I have this real, it's that they borrow little household objects and like repurpose them. And then there was another one that I'm thinking, I had a bunch of Geronimo Stilton books as a kid. I looked that up recently. There's like 1,000 Geronimo Stilton books. There's a lot. The closest comparison is like Warhammer. Unironically, it's to like Warhammer is how many fucking books there are. But yeah, so I've always had this kind of nostalgia and this soft spot for stories about small characters like mice who take little household objects and common things and they repurpose them to do, you know, in kind of charming, creative little ways to do little tasks that they need. So and this movie has a lot of that. The Rescuers has a lot of that. And I love, so if you don't know, The Rescuers is about, there's this little girl who's been captured. You don't know why. She's on this like weird pirate ship in a swamp, and she sends out a message in a bottle. And the message gets found by, there's this whole worldwide organization of mice and little critters. And they have an association. They're the rescue aid services, I think. And they do, their thing is they do little rescues for people. And there's someone who needs help. It's this very kind of simple. There's a lot of quaintness to this film. Partially, I think it's very 70s in a lot of ways. There's this message that they find. They have a lead, but they don't. You know, they need someone to volunteer. And the main characters are the janitor for the rescue society, whose name is Bernard, which that's my dad's name, which I always find kind of funny. He's Bernard the Mouse, who's played by Bob Newhart, who's dressed as like Mario. He's dressed like Mario. And then the representative, because they have all these like international, it's so 70s. They have all these like international representatives, and there's the mouse from like, you know, they're all just like these weird there's like these racial stereotypes, but it's in that way where it's this kind of like 70s liberal kind of thing where it's like, I don't know, like it doesn't feel bad. It feels just kind of quaint and charming. Like the one from Africa, it's just a mouse with an afro. It's like there's like the Arabic mouse with like the headdress and everything and the robes. It's fun. And you know what sold me on this film? It's when Bernard comes out and he's going to take he's gonna like open up the bottle and pull out the message for them. And he comes and he's got he's carrying this big like toothed comb. I think that's what it's called. Not one of those combs with the handle on it. It's like the you know, the tooth, yeah, all the teeth on it. He pulls that out and I was like, what's he going to use that for? You know, why does he have that? I didn't know where it was going. And then he props it up against the bottle and he uses it as a ladder. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. I love that. And the whole movie has stuff like that I really love that stuff. These really creative little ways of capturing the world of these little critters. I find that stuff super charming and there's so much personality in it. So there's one representative. It's the representative from Hungary who volunteers, Miss Bianca. And she's like this just super cute, like little mouse character. And it's funny because it's like you say that and people's immediate reaction is like, oh, like a furry way. And like, no, not in a furry way for me, but I can like I can see it, you know, like she's really cute. And and I love her little accent. I love her little like Hungarian European accent that she's got. And Bernard clearly has like a little crush on her. And she has this kind of like stylish, fashionable way of dressing, you know, for a mouse. Like this big fur hat and everything. And she asks Bernard to accompany her on the mission to rescue this little girl. And they go and head out, and they're in New York City in the 70s when it's like, there's this really, I like this contrast a lot where New York in the 70s is like dirty. It's like dirty and gross and dingy. But in this movie, like it's all there. Like it's dark and heavy. There's a lot of atmosphere. There's not a lot of like sound effects in it. You know, there's not a lot of like goofy cartoon sound effects. There's some score to accompany the emotion of what's happening, but it's kind of understated. It's a very quiet movie. It's a very kind of slow-paced feeling film. But there's this kind of coziness to it. The way they're walking around the dark streets. There's like no one around. It's this really quiet, sparse night in New York, and they're walking to the New York Zoo. And Bernard is he's gonna go try to cut a path through, and he gets scared by the lion. And this is, you know, all these little scenes that make me like these characters a lot. When I say that like the movie has these real 70s quaint features, they go to this orphanage that she was at, and the cat at the orphanage directs them to go to this pawn shop. And they go to the pawn shop, and you know that it's like this seedy place. They've got like guns on the wall. And one thing that I just thought was really funny is there's like a button, I guess. It's on the wall. It's like a button or a badge or something for the NRA. And I was like, dude, you would never see that in a movie today. I don't even know if you would see that as late as like the 90s, you know? I don't like they literally people are, oh, you couldn't do that today. Disney would never have the like a pin for the NRA, even in like this is like the lair of the villain, right, of the movie. They would never even put that there. It would be some kind of bullshit absorbed in some bullshit fucking commentary thing. But it just exists as it's like that's just a thing, you know? That's just a thing that exists in the world. And I like that they don't really shy away from that it's not like a really dark movie. It is in some ways, but it's never like dismal. It's Bernard and Bianca, and they're going on a little adventure. But there's clearly like the world around them. That's what I really like that about the movie, is that there's this constant feeling of danger. There's this constant sense that like there's a lot of effort. So like you watch a lot of like talking little critter type things like Chip and Dale, right? Or Tom and Jerry, something like that, where the main characters are these small animals. And what's really interesting in The Rescuers is that there's a lot of effort and a lot of little details and things, little shots and little touches to really sell that they are small animals and they don't just like walk around. And the fact that they're animals is a very real part of the plot. And the fact that they're so tiny is acknowledged, and it's a very relevant part of the story. And you see that in like the way that they have to get around. There's little, you know, they have to climb over things. They go to an airport, and just like, oh, there's a little shot of Bernard, and he has to like run out of the way because someone's about to step on him. And there's not a big deal made of it. It's just these facts of their life as mice. And that combined with like the way that they use little objects in creative ways. I just really like, I don't know. It's such a creative, charming little film. I love these two little characters so much. And the villains are appropriately, you know, these evil adults. She wants the diamond. Medusa wants the diamond. And she's gonna take this little girl and lower her down into like this underground cave. Oh my god, you want to talk about the sense of danger. Jesus, like this whole scene where this girl is going, they need her to get this diamond from this underground cave that was like a pirate's lair. And the big threat is that like the tide comes up and the cave can fill with water, and that's a thing that they have to be aware of the whole time. And it's really like, oh god, like, you know, she's like edging her way around this hole in the ground where the water comes up out of, and I'm like, oh my god, I feel like she could slip and fall, or the water's gonna shoot up and knock her off balance. Like, it's really dangerous feeling. But it never goes too far. Like, nothing that bad ever really happens. Yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know. It's such a nice movie. I had such a good time watching it. It hits these little things that feel very nostalgic for me, that make me just kind of happy. I love the kind of scratchy art style. The kind of, a lot of the backgrounds are very like painted. It has this just great atmosphere. I really liked it. I was surprised to find apparently some people don't like it as much. Like, I was looking at like the Rescuers. Let me go back to the 68% on Rotten Tomatoes. I know that can be a little misleading because of how they consider good and bad reviews, but kind of surprising. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It just made me really happy. I would if I had a kid, I would love showing this movie to them.